Alright, good evening everybody. Welcome to Tech Thursdays. This is going to be episode 140. I can't believe we've been doing that many, but we are going to talk about the industry at large on this episode of Tech Thursdays. The industry being the PC DIY, the tech industry. Last week was CES. This week there's not a whole lot going on. There were a couple of announcements when it comes to graphics cards, so we will be talking about graphics cards on this episode of Tech Thursdays because there's a lot of changes coming to the consumer market. Last week was the Consumer Electronics Show, but it felt like it was actually a business-to-business show and an investors show based off of everything that was discussed. If you guys tuned in to the keynote of CES, we live streamed the reaction with the audience here. That was last Tuesday, so that was the 6th of January, or was it the 5th of January? I can't remember. Either way, it was a bunch of stuff about AI, if you already guessed, but it's definitely all about AI. We're not going to talk about AI too much on this episode of Tech Thursdays. We have talked about AI in the past. We've actually gone into the nuts and bolts of how AI infrastructure works. We've done 2 live streams on that topic previously. So if you're wanting to know more about AI, at least the infrastructure behind how AI factories, as Jensen likes to call them, how those are actually designed and how they actually operate, so that you, the end user, can interface and talk to ChatGPT or any similar AI application in the cloud, definitely check out those episodes. I will probably link those somewhere in the description of this live stream sometime after the live stream. But we're not really going to focus on AI. We're going to focus on the tech news because that is why you guys are here. And one thing that we might circle back to is Mini's forum. You guys can see here, Mini's forum was at CES last week showing off motherboards that have Strix Halo, aka Ryzen AI Max, in them. So if you look at this one on the right hand side here, underneath this block of aluminum would be the Strix Halo CPU. So that APU with that integrated Radeon 8060S, and I'm guessing the LPDDR5X is on the top and the bottom there where it says warning. But that is really cool to see because that's something that I never expected to actually see, which means you can truly do a small form custom built PC featuring a Ryzen AI Max. And if you guys tuned into the gaming live streams last year, we did feature on this channel the Strix Halo for gaming as well as AI, and it's pretty good. It's impressive for a small form factor. In fact, this is the only small form factor design that I would actually use. The cool thing about this motherboard is that it also has a full physical PCIe slot, so you could actually connect a graphics card in there as well to work with the Strix Halo. So not only would you have the most powerful integrated graphics on the planet, you could potentially have the most powerful discrete graphics with one of the most powerful and energy efficient mobile chips that is actually capable of blowing every other mobile chip out of the water except for maybe Apple's M series in certain workloads, I might add. So but yeah, that's something I wanted to point out because that stood out to me as an interesting article here. So they've got the BD350i Max motherboard, which already has RAM. So you can see this is like an ITX form factor. And then this one here looks like this would just be a socketable mobile version of the Zen 5 desktop chip. So this would be like a 9955HX or a 9955HX 3D. These are even more niche than the Ryzen AI Max. If you want to do a mini PC build, technically you don't need to use a mobile processor. You can literally just go with a desktop processor and just choose like a micro ATX motherboard or a mini ITX motherboard, depending on what you want to do. But it is cool that they're doing this. So it's cool that they're doing that. So finally, someone who's doing something a little bit outside the norm when it comes to these PC designs. But let's talk about graphics cards. So the graphics cards, there's going to be some changes this year. So because of AI, first of all, AI has caused a lot of problems for those of you that are into building desktop computers. First, there was the memory. Then there was the SSDs. Now, here comes phase 3, the graphics cards. Particularly graphics cards that are good value and have good amounts of VRAM. So, NVIDIA is going to cut down, it's not rumored, this is already known, like Asus spoke out about this. So they are cutting supply to the add-in board manufacturers, or the add-in board, what is this, AIC? AIC is, it's a VAR, whatever, but value add reseller. So basically like Asus and the people who make graphics cards. By 15 to 20%. Also, no new well, okay. First of all, we knew that there was no new GPUs this year. If you've been following this channel for a while, you would have known that. There is a small chance that we could get the super refresh in the summer. That is still a possibility. But that is not a new GPU in the sense that it is not a next generation. It is just a refined version of the existing generation. So no next generation NVIDIA graphics cards this year. But I've been saying that since a year ago. We already know this. So this is not news. This is not news at all. Like, people who know technology should already know this. Okay, so 20% reduction. But really what they're doing is they're cutting down the supply of specific SKUs. One of them is going to be the RTX 5070 Ti. The 5070 Ti is a big problem for NVIDIA for several reasons. Number one, it is offering the consumer good value, which is kind of rare for an NVIDIA graphics card since the beginning of this decade. The last time we had a good value GPU from NVIDIA, it was the RTX 3080 back during the pandemic, like, what is that, 5 years ago now? 5.5 years ago almost? That was September of 2020. So yeah, a very long time. That was the last like good value GPU. Recently, the RTX 5070 Ti has offered similar value. It is more expensive, but it is of similar value. It's slightly more expensive than the RTX 3080 was when it was new. If you adjust for inflation, they're kind of similarly priced. And the RTX 5070 Ti is NVIDIA's best GPU overall in many categories. Now, the AMD equivalent to that is the RX 9070 XT. The 9870 XT is similarly priced. It's typically cheaper. It offers the exact same amount of VRAM, 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And in terms of performance, they're about the same. The one thing where the NVIDIA card wins out is going to be with multi-frame gen technology. The 5070 Ti has multi-frame gen, so you can do 4x frame gen with the 5070 Ti. You cannot do that with the AMD card. At least currently you can't do that. I don't know if they're going to allow multi-frame gen in the future with their current GPUs or if they're going to wait for the next generation. But as far as NVIDIA goes, the 5070 Ti is not profitable enough for them, because if you look at NVIDIA's revenue statements and the profit loss statements, they're at the point now where the 5070 Ti is lowering their stock price. Now, a lot of people don't understand what I mean by that, but if you're a finance guy and you look at how many, basically, the 5070 Ti is it's a much lower margin, higher volume product. So when you sell a lot of those and your profit margin is smaller than versus selling like a professional version of that or a AI chip to some business customer that's going to fork over millions of dollars, you know where this is going. The 5070 Ti is going to negatively impact their profit percentage to the point where it can negatively affect their stock price. So it can force it to trend in the wrong direction. So NVIDIA is basically transforming, if not already transformed, They're turning into a company that is now focused more on maintaining a higher profit margin percentage over the dividend payouts. Or there's like a ratio. I forget what the finance term is for that. But they're becoming one of those wide moat, like dividend paying companies that cannot take as many big risks as a smaller, leaner company can. So they're basically turning into an older company that is slower to change because of what is happening to them with AI, and they want to maintain their lead in the AI market in that space. So they have to cut supply on 5070 Ti because it is going to negatively affect them. That is one of the secret reasons why they're doing this. Now, gamers are going to look at this like this is anti-gamer. I mean, yeah, it's obviously going to look anti-gamer, but this is a pro NVIDIA move to help NVIDIA stabilize itself. So they're going to reduce they're basically going to cancel. They're going to cancel and stop production of the 5070 Ti because it is costing them, well, it's not that it's costing them too much money. That's the wrong way to say it. It's not making them enough money. That's the way to say it. So they're going to cancel it because they can't afford to give consumers a 16 gigabyte GPU at the current price point that the 5070 Ti is selling at. That's the reason. So number two, the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte is another card that is going to cut supply significantly down because of a similar reasoning. 16 gigabytes. Basically, if you are a gamer, you're not going to be able to get a 16 gigabyte card from NVIDIA this year unless you literally buy one tomorrow or now, because it's not profitable enough. And right now, the amount of memory that is allocated to AI chips is so foregone that there's just no supply for the consumer chips. So they're going to have to scrape by with 8 gigabyte SKUs for the rest of the entire year. So that is the reason why there's a lot of rumors going around that the Super refresh has been effectively canceled, because if you remember, the Supers are supposed to bring balance to the force. They're supposed to bring actual, like, decent VRAM amounts to the gamer market. Like, for example, the RTX 5080 Super is a 24 gigabyte graphics card. We already know this. Like, this is not a secret. At least if you watch this channel, it's not a secret. If you're not in the know, then maybe you wouldn't know this. But that GPU would have been the redemption arc of the RTX 5080 class GPU, because the 5080 is a terrible GPU. It's probably NVIDIA's worst GPU in a long time. So, but the 5080 Super was going to fix that. So unfortunately, the GeForce brand is not looking good this year. If you play games at 1080p and you don't play like really demanding games like UE5 games, then I guess an 8 gigabyte GPU is okay. But personally, I would never buy an 8 gigabyte GPU in 2026. It is like the most anti-future-proof thing you could possibly do. So I'm basically going to avoid NVIDIA like the plague until this whole thing just rides out. So that kind of leaves only one other option. I mean, technically there's two other options. There's Intel, but Intel doesn't really have anything right now that's enthusiastic. So really AMD is the only option. And okay, the thing with AMD, the VRAM also affects, the memory chips also affect AMD. Almost as bad as NVIDIA. The main difference between AMD and NVIDIA with the current graphics cards is that NVIDIA is using GDDR7 and AMD is using GDDR6. So my understanding is that the GDDR7 is going to be harder to get because it is the latest and greatest, not counting the latest and greatest HBM. And we all know that the AI chips use HBM for the DGX and GDDR7 for the MGX. So let's bring up Paint now so we can discuss this in depth. So NVIDIA has to allocate memory, aka VRAM, for the following product lines. Number 1, DGX. This is the highest priority. Number 2, HGX. This is the second highest priority. Oh, and then number 3, MGX. This is the third priority. Fourth, professional GPUs. Number 5, GeForce. So, this is the hierarchy. GeForce is the lowest end. DGX is the highest end in terms of priority. Priority allocation. From highest to lowest. GeForce is the lowest priority. Keep that in mind. So, what does DGX use? DGX uses HBM. HGX also uses HBM. MGX uses GDDR7. Herein lies the problem. Professional GPUs uses GDDR7/GDDR6 depending on SKU. And then finally, the gamers. Do any gaming cards of the 50 series use GDDR6? So, oh, the 5050? Okay, so it's the same as the professional. GDDR7, GDDR6. Now, keep in mind that, okay, now let's talk about SK Hynix. Let's talk about SK Hynix for a second. So, because there seems to be this assumption that, oh, well, HBM is made on one production line, and GDDR7 is on another production line, and DDR5 is on a... Okay, that's true. But here's the thing. Something you need to keep in mind. Let's say, for simplicity, SK Hynix has 100 production lines. Let's say they have a total of 100 production lines. So, they can either have all 100 of them manufacturing HBM and only HBM, which means they're not manufacturing any GDDR7, no DDR5, no DDR4. 100% of the production is all in on HBM. So that is something that they could do. Technically, they could do that. Or they could do, some kind of mix, which is the realistic thing. But here is the problem. The AI companies have already negotiated deals. It's all about deals. It's all about closing deals at the end of the day. And companies like OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, NVIDIA, some rando Chinese AI company somewhere, some other AI company in, South Africa somewhere. You get where I'm going with this? The companies have already allocated the production of how SK Hynix is going to allocate the production lines, because they've already bought up all the capacity. So even if SK Hynix could do, okay, let's do 50 lines for DDR5, 20 lines for HBM, 10 lines for GDDR7. You know, what is this? 30? Is that even an option? Yeah, 30 lines. Wait, that's too many. 20 lines for GDDR6 or whatever the mix is. They can change this around. They don't have to be like, oh, well, we can only have 20 lines for HBM. No, that's not going to fly. So what they're going to do, they're going to cut into these. They're going to reduce this to like 20 lines, and they're going to up this by like 30 lines. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna shift it around. They're gonna shift it around because they have to, because they legally have to. Because here's the thing, guys: when you close a deal, like let's say I am, let's say I'm the guy from OpenAI, Sam, and I go to SK Hynix and I tell SK Hynix, hey, I'm going to pay you. I don't know where I got the money from, but let's say I'm going to pay you 1.6 billion US dollars. Well, I'm going to give you, I am OpenAI, I make ChatGPT. I'm going to give Mr. SK Hynix $1.6 billion for memory. And SK Hynix is like, okay, that's like dollar signs in the eyeballs, you know what I'm saying? Ding, ding, ding. Okay, very nice. 1.6 billion. Okay. And then, yeah, there's a certain conditions. There's certain conditions. Milestones need to be met if I'm going to give you this money. You are going to ensure that you can deliver my AI company X number of memory chips every month, or it might be every month, it might be every week, it might be every quarter, whatever the milestone is agreed upon. So herein lies the reason why we are where we are. Because SK Hynix, they signed the deal with the devil. They have already signed their life away to the AI companies. They legally have to do this. They legally have to do this. Because they took the money. They've agreed to the deal. It is a contract agreement, guys. This is normal business practices. There's nothing under the table. This isn't some kind of weird, like, shady business. No. This is all full transparency. It's out in the open. We're talking about SK Hynix. The same thing has happened to Samsung. The same thing has happened to Micron. They have cut these deals with these companies where they have to deliver a certain quantity of memory chips, usually HBM or GDDR7 and DRAM as well, because they need the servers. So because of this, we are in this situation. So who ends up suffering? All the consumers, because there's literally 3 companies and they've signed the agreements. They're basically committed to receive the money, and that's how it is. That is where we're at. So that is why there's no such thing as, it's a conspiracy, and if they wanted to, they could just manufacture more DDR5. Actually, no, they can't. They physically can't, because someone bought up all the capacity and told them that they need to. It's like, you have 10 lines going on HBM. Well, I'm about to pay you $2 billion, so you better shut those DDR5 lines down and convert them over to HBM. And they'll agree. They agree to it. It's in the agreement, guys. That is how it works. It's all big business. It's all about closing deals. Seriously, this is truly what is happening. If this is news to you guys, well, now you guys know. Now you guys know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. Now you know why RAM prices are where they're at. Because there's like somewhere in there, they've got like 2, okay, that's an exaggeration. They're probably down to like 10 lines for DDR5 or something, or maybe 20 lines of production for DDR5. It's some kind of weird mix right now where I know HBM is going to get the lion's share for the next year, and then GDDR7 is also ramping big. But, like I said earlier, MGX is higher priority than GeForce. So even though SK Hynix is cranking out so much GDDR7, it's all going to MGX. It's not going to GeForce. Hence the reason why you're going to be stuck with 8 gigabyte GDDR. Okay, so this is a done deal. This is a done deal. And the point about the spot prices on VRAM, okay, like I just said, what did I just say earlier? I've already addressed this point about spot prices on VRAM. DDR5 is suffering the most right now because DDR5 doesn't. Okay, DDR5 goes in the servers for the CPUs. So DDR5 is still very much needed. And I'm talking about AI servers, by the way. Because AI, you need. Well, we talked about this on the last 2 live streams where we talked about AI. So DDR5 is needed for all 3 fabrics. HBM is needed for the GPUs. And so basically HBM goes in the DGX and the HGX. So we've already discussed this in very, very granular detail. GDDR7, the reason why GDDR7's cost is not going up is because GDDR7 is still being manufactured in massive, massive quantities for MGX. That is the reason why. And the GeForce cards can basically leech off of that. They can just jump on that bandwagon and still get their allocation through that. So meaning the ratio for GDDR7 is not changing. Right now, the ratio is adjusted where DDR5 is getting hurt the most. And that's the reason why you're seeing DDR5 prices where they're at. Basically, if the memory doesn't go in a graphics card or a AI accelerator, the cost is not going to skyrocket yet because you have these things using GDDR7. Yeah. So basically the 3 big companies, and I shouldn't just call out SK Hynix here. It's not just SK Hynix. It is also Samsung. It is also Micron. All 3 of them have signed these deals. They've signed on to these deals. And these are in the billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. We're not talking millions. We're talking billions of dollars. So it is not a thing that is going to go away anytime soon. At least not for this year. It's not going to go away this year. I can guarantee you that. Do I think the 3090 will appreciate in 2026? No, because the compute requirements are only going up. Now, because it has 24 gigs of VRAM, I mean, it's just kind of sustain itself. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to go up in price. If anything, it's going to go down in price by the end of the year. I mean, the 3090 isn't even... I mean, it's an okay graphics card in 2026. I mean, it has the VRAM on the back that'll overheat and burn out. So, I mean, I personally would never buy one. So, I don't think it's going to go up in value. And most AI inferencing models that go in servers are requiring like 32 gigabyte GPUs or 48 gigabyte GPUs nowadays. So 24 gigabyte GPUs are interesting because they're not completely useless for AI, and they're also decent for gaming. So I guess that's where your question is coming from. Because I can see where somebody, like a hobbyist who wants to get into AI, they can benefit from a 3090. A gamer can also benefit from a 3090 because they don't have to worry about VRAM bottlenecks. So, I mean, there's that, but I don't know. Maybe Asus will start making what? Asus will start making AI? SLI has nothing to do with that. You don't need to use SLI for what you're saying about AI. It goes over PCIe. Only the true AI, and the true AI doesn't even use the 3090's NVLink bridge. It uses the real NVLink, which is the real deal. None of that rinky-dink garbage SLI that goes on a 3090. We're talking like the real deal NVLink. Yeah, the RAM stuff is gonna be oh man. But okay, here's what AI needs. What AI wants, AI gets. Okay. What does AI need or want or whatever? Okay, here's what it needs. Number one, it needs VRAM. Number 2, it needs DRAM. Number 3, it needs SSDs. Number 4, it needs NVLink. Number 5, it needs L2 switches, layer 2 switches, and a lot of them. Number 6, it needs CPUs. I guess that should have been higher up on the list, but NVIDIA would tell you otherwise. And then it needs, obviously, it needs power, and it needs water. So it needs all of these things to work. If it doesn't have these things, I guess we could also mention other things. Fiber cables, copper cables, you know, whatever, like all the layer 1 things that it needs. But it needs a lot of stuff. It basically needs a lot of stuff. It needs water, it needs power, it needs fiber cables, it needs copper cables, it needs CPUs, L2 switches, RAMs, SSDs, VRAM, and the interconnects. So these are the requirements. So if it needs these things, good luck if you also need these things. Because money talks. If you ain't got no money, if you ain't got like $2 billion ready to go, you're not on the list. It's that simple. That's how these companies operate. Because these guys have been enticed by the money. You know, I call it the memory cartel. I'm not the only one that's used this phrase, but these 3 companies are basically the memory cartel. It's the memory cartel. They got to go to the memory cartel. Now that they have tasted the money of AI, the consumers are at the bottom of the totem pole now. Because if AI needs VRAM, AI gets all the VRAM they want. If AI needs DDR5, DDR4, it gets all the DDR5. So, case in point, go look at try looking at like a 96 gigabyte DIMM. Or, okay, that's wrong. For consumers, you guys are aware of 64 gigabyte DIMM. 64 gigabyte DIMM. The price of a 64 gigabyte DIMM. Because pretty soon, at least in the RDIMM world, there are 96 gigabyte RDIMM for servers. They're gobbling up all of these. And that is why memory prices are so through the roof right now. Because all the dense ones are going to AI. They're taking all the big ones. They don't want all the little ones. They don't care about the fast ones. They want all the big ones. They're basically siphoning all the energy, all the power and electricity, all the water, all the natural gas. They're taking everything. You need an SSD? Oh boy. Oh man. SSDs. Like, okay. Here's the reference prices. So you guys have references if you want to do some shopping for memory. Here's the thing. 2x 48 gigabyte, $350. If you're spending over $350, you're overpaying for that much memory, for 96 gigs of memory. So SSDs, 4 terabyte SSD, $200. If you're paying more than $200 for a 4 terabyte SSD, you're overpaying. These are the reference. The reason why I'm telling you guys this is so that you can tell if the SSD or the memory that you're looking at is overpriced because of AI. Because AI, I can tell you right now, AI is getting these at less than these numbers. I'm not going to tell you what the cost to the AI company is, but I can tell you that it's less than this. So meaning, if like OpenAI wants a 4 terabyte SSD, I can tell you, I can guarantee right now they're not paying $200. They're paying way less. They're paying way less. And they're also paying way less than $350 for 96 gigs of DDR5. So this is how the consumer is getting shafted really, really bad right now. Real bad. It's like completely upside down. But that's as far as we're going to go on revealing like the price structure. But these are typically the reference numbers. These are the reference numbers. So this is the reason why, personally, I'm not buying computer hardware right now. For any reason. Because if I can't be at these prices, I'm just not going to buy. I'm just not going to buy. I mean, it's like, what the heck? Like, four terabyte drives are already over $400 and climbing. Yeah, SSDs are going to keep going up. SSDs are going up because it's going to get harder to find. So right now, so the AI guys are looking at, just so you guys are aware, AI servers are buying 64 gigabyte RDIMM or 96 gigabyte RDIMM. This is one DIMM, one stick. One stick of RAM has either 64 gigabytes on just the one stick or 96 gigabytes on one stick. And pretty soon, so it's either 64, 96, and pretty soon there is also the 128 gigabyte RDIMM, meaning one stick of server memory has 128 gigs of RAM. Imagine if you need to order, let's say I need 8,192 sticks. 8,192 sticks times 128 gigs of RAM. Let's do some math here. So what is that going to be? That is 1,048,567 gigabytes of DDR5. 1,048,576 gigabytes of memory. And you know what this is for? For one AI cluster. One AI cluster. Not the whole data center. We're talking a single AI cluster. One of them is requiring this much memory, guys. Do you understand now why RAM is the way it is? The demand is so high. Guys, I have seen the other side. I have been to the other side. I know what it's like. The average consumer has no idea the sort of numbers that in terms of system requirements for AI. Think about this. 1 million gigs of RAM for one AI cluster. Now what happens if you want 40 AI clusters? 40 AI clusters. For 40 AI clusters. 41,943,040 gigabytes of DDR5 for 2 gigawatt AI factory. For 2 gigawatt AI factory. This is the reason why memory is where it's at for consumers. This is one AI factory. Keep that in mind. There are like dozens of AI factories being built as we speak. So this problem is not going away. Like consumers having to deal with high memory prices, this is not something that's going to go away in like 2 months. Right now, when you have this kind of requirements, this is the system requirements for DDR5 for like AI factory. Think about that. So these numbers put things into perspective on the DRAM. Why DRAM is priced where it's at. Now, there's one thing that I haven't mentioned. Not only is this required for the servers, we haven't even talked about the network equipment, the layer 2 switches. The switches also have DRAM in them. So now, not only do you include the price of DRAM for the servers, for like the AMD Epics and the Intel Xeons, well, what about all your layer 2 network equipment that's going to connect everything? How are you going to do your NVLink? How are you going to scale out? Scale out. The scale out also requires vast amounts of DRAM. This lies the problem. Because not only do you have system requirements like in the billions, and well, okay, billions, well, yeah, we're talking billions because this is one AI factory is already 41 million. So if you're going to build like dozens of these all over the world, you're going to get up into those billion numbers of memory chips. And then not only that, you got to tack on all your layer 2 switches. You got to tack on all your storage fabrics. All the servers that are related to the storage have nothing to do with the GPUs. So this becomes a massive, massive, massive problem. And that is the reason why SSDs are just only going to go up in price, because we haven't even gotten to SSDs yet. How many terabytes in one SSD do you guys think goes in the storage? So, AI uses roughly 30 terabyte in one SSD. 30 terabyte SSD. Enterprise SSD. 30 terabyte SSDs. Imagine having 30 terabyte SSDs in your PC. M.2. 30 terabytes. Now, I'm telling you right now, it's not M.2. This is U.3. 30 terabyte SSDs. Now do you understand why SSDs are on the list of things that are going to go way up in price when every single SSD is 30 terabyte SSD? Where are you going to get all that NAND flash? You're going to take it from the consumer market. Duh. It's like, where are you going to get all those NAND flash? Like, what the heck? All the TLC flash? MLC flash? It's all going away. 30 terabytes per drive. How many drives are we talking about here in one server? One server is like, I don't know, like 40 drives. 40 drives times 30 terabyte? Like, what is this? We're going to be in the petabytes. 30 TB times 40. That's what is that? 1.2 petabyte. 1.2 petabyte per server? And you need a cluster. So we're not talking one server. We're talking like dozens of servers. So yeah, SSDs are rip SSD prices. Rip SSD prices. I mean, there you go. SSDs are next. So, oh man. It is not looking pretty for the average consumer who wants to build a PC this year. Hence the reason why I've gone back to retro gaming. It's like I've gone back to retro gaming. I literally went back to the 7th gen of gaming to relive the glory days, to get away from all of this. To get away from all of this. This is it's so foregone. Oh man. Oh man. It's roughly, what is it? $100 for a 2 terabyte. That's, you're paying roughly $10 a gigabyte or something like that, or somewhere around there, if I remember correctly. But man, it's so messed up. The consumer, the DRAM market, the flash market, so flash SSD storage. This is going to affect things like SD cards and like the memory, the SD Express that goes in the Nintendo Switch 2. Wow. Oh man. Oh man. So the power bill rates are already going up since Q3. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Basically, if an AI data center is going up in your area, your power bills are going to go up. I mean, they're already negotiating with the local governments, the municipalities. They're in talks. AI companies are coming in. They're negotiating. Guys, the other stupid thing about this, which we haven't even talked about, it's a great thing you brought up the power bill. I don't know how this is legal, but apparently the AI companies have negotiated. They've already pre-negotiated fixed electric rates that are far lower than the average consumer household. Like, how are they able to do that? I don't know. I mean, because their kilowatt consumption percentage is like an enormous number. So why do they get... I mean, maybe they can get a little bit of a discount, but I mean, really, come on. Like... The average, I don't know what the average US household is paying on electricity on a monthly basis, but what I can tell you, this might be too much information, but some of these AI companies, these AI, we call them neoclouds, these guys are paying like 3 cents per kilowatt hour. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them have negotiated at 3 cents per kilowatt for their AI factory. So they're going to pull it straight off the grid. They're going to pull some stupid number like 2 gigawatts of electricity right off the grid, paying 3 cents per kilowatt. 3 cents per kilowatt. Good luck. Good luck, consumers. Good luck, residential customers. You're competing with some giant thing that pulls 2 gigawatts of electricity off the grid, or whatever, 100 megawatts, 200 megawatts. And they're paying like 3 cents or 4 cents a kilowatt because they somehow pre-negotiated it like 4 years ago and they've got milestones to hit. So yeah, it's pretty bad, man. Like, there's a lot of negative stuff with AI as well. There's positive stuff, but obviously all you got to do if you want to hear about the positive things of AI, all you got to do is go watch the CES keynote presentations from last week. But they never talk about the negative aspects of AI. So, it is not looking good. It is not looking good. So, I did not expect this stream to be super negative, though. I knew there was going to be a lot of stuff to talk about the GPUs. Like, 16 gigabyte GPUs from NVIDIA are going to go way, way down in supply this year. So the 5070 Ti has been canceled in terms of production, at least for the next 3 to 6 months. So I don't know what that means for the gamers. I guess gamers are going to have to settle for they're either going to have to overspend on a 5080, and even though, I think the supply of 5080 is going to be kind of low also, but they're not discontinuing that one. And then or they're going to have to settle for a lower end GPU, like an 8 gigabyte GPU or a 12 gigabyte 5070 or something. I mean, that's what the excuse is going to be. The excuse is going to be, well, just get a 5070. Why do you need 16 gigs? Who needs 16 gigs? You don't need 16 gigs. You're a gamer. You only need 8. 12 is good enough. You know, like that's going to be the rebuttal to the gamers complaining about, well, I want a 16 gig GPU. Okay, well, buy an AMD then. But then the AMD ones, the thing is, we don't even know what's going to happen with the AMD supply. AMD's GPU supply is also going to be affected. Speaking of AMD, AMD's supposed to launch a new generation of graphics cards at the end of this year. But I don't know if this memory situation is going to affect them, because it probably will. Because, right, if they plan to use GDDR7, good luck with that new GPU launch not being a paper launch. Because I can tell you right now, if they launch RDNA 5 or whatever, and it's using GDDR7, it is going to be a paper launch in December of this year. So, it's not looking pretty good, man. AMD was planning on releasing a series of LPDDR cards? Wait, what? They're going to delay the RDNA 5? I don't know if they can afford to do that. I mean, I guess they could. Now that I think about it, they can. The only problem is, and we've talked about this in the past, AMD needs to launch their GPUs away from NVIDIA. Like, they need to stop launching their GPUs right next to NVIDIA's GPUs. Because since the 30 series, AMD kind of screwed up their own launch windows. AMD historically has been an odd-numbered year GPU company. That changed with RDNA 2. If you guys remember, so I guess we don't need any of this stuff anymore. We're going to delete all of this. Delete all of this stuff. We don't need any of that stuff. That's all AI. That's all AI slop. We don't need that. You guys remember 2015. R9 Fury X. R9 Fury. You go back 2013. 2013. R9 290X. R9 290. You go back even 2011. 2011. The HD 7970 and HD 7950. This is what I mean when I say historically AMD is an odd-numbered year. That's what I'm referring to when I say odd-numbered year. 2017. What was 2017? RX, Vega 64, RX, Vega 56. 2019. 2019, Radeon 7. And then later in the middle of that year, RX 5700 XT. So this is what I mean when I say AMD, the red team has historically been an odd numbered year. That doesn't mean that they always have to be an odd numbered year. I'm just saying historically they have been an odd numbered year. NVIDIA is an even numbered year. You can just fill in the blanks for any of these years and you can find when they were. 2014, GTX 980. 2016, you had GTX 1080. You had 18 RTX 2080. So basically, NVIDIA is that even numbered year. They bring in their new generation on the even numbered years. So now we get to 2020. Pandemic. Line up outside Costco to buy toilet paper. Pandemic. No traveling. Work from home. Pandemic. Everyone's in a global pandemic. Don't go outside. If you live in China, you can't leave your house. Pandemic. Shut down all the factories. Pandemic. That's 2020. You guys know what it was like. It was 2020. So what happens? RTX 30. RX 6000, like what the heck? Like, oh, the Radeon stuff is here. Whoa, Radeon's here too. Well, fancy that. Radeon is here in 2020. Radeon, what's going on? Radeon is here. Oh, 6800 XT. 3080. Whoa, whoa, what's going on? Oh, Buzz Lightyear. I'm not aiming for the truck. We got the big Navi, we got big Navi, and we got the biggest big Navi. Like, whoa, what happened? Probably the greatest GPU launch from AMD in a decade. Basically since this one. Because this one was also a good launch. So when these launched, they were the fastest GPUs in the world. When this launched, it was the fastest GPU in the world for I think like 4 or 5 weeks. When this launched, it was the second fastest GPU in the world. When this launched, it was maybe the second fastest, or if not the third fastest, or it like tied the 1080. And then when this launched, it was the fourth fastest GPU. So you see where I'm going with this? Basically, when AMD launched this HD 7970 in 2011, it was the undisputed fastest gaming GPU in the world when it launched in 2011. When it launched the R9 290X, it was also the fastest consumer GPU in the world. Now, obviously, okay, there was the NVIDIA Titan, the what do they call it back then? The GTX Titan. There was the GTX Titan for $1,000, but nobody took that seriously back then. No one believed in buying a $1,000 GPU. So the R9 290X was the undisputed fastest GPU in the world for the gamers at whatever the price was, $550, $650, somewhere around there. But then, I think in like 1 month or less than a month, NVIDIA launched the 780 Ti and took back the crown. In like, you know, it was like a few weeks or whatever. So, but technically, the point that I'm making is when this GPU came out on launch day, it was the fastest GPU. You go to 2015. Fury X comes out. But guess what? NVIDIA rained on the parade because NVIDIA, the previous month or like a few weeks before the Fury X launch, NVIDIA's like, well, we're going to launch GTX 980 Ti. 980 Ti. They launched 980 Ti, and then they basically took the crown. They leapfrogged over their own 980, which came out back in 2014, so that when the Fury X came out, it was the second fastest GPU. So this was the moment where once the 980 Ti came out, since that point in history, in 2015, AMD was never able to release a GPU that could decisively win against NVIDIA. It wasn't until the pandemic, it wasn't until the pandemic, specifically December of 2020, when they launched this guy, that they finally like had something that was going toe-to-toe with NVIDIA's best. So, this is kind of a thing. So the strange thing is like, hey, 2020 is NVIDIA's year. This is the year of RTX 30, like 3090, 3080. They launched here. So why are these guys here exactly? Like, what? Who invited them? Like, what? Who are these people? Like, there's these people at the front door. Like, who are they? I don't know who they are. Like, they're calling themselves RDNA 2. Are they on the list? Like, I don't know. Like, who are these people? So that's basically what happened. Like, everyone was kind of like, what? The red team is here? Like, what's going on? Because I remember, like, no one could buy 3080. It was one of those things. Get ready at bestbuy.com. Get on your mark. Get set. Get ready to click at the browser. Ready. Best Buy says coming soon. RTX 3080 Founders Edition. Get ready on your mark. Get set. Don't blink. Don't blink. Don't blink. Coming soon. Coming soon. RTX 3080 coming soon. Out of stock. Sold out. It goes from coming soon, sold out. Out of stock. What? Where's the button? Is it here yet? Where's the button? I can't even add to cart. It's like it's sold out. It was like coming soon, sold out. Coming soon, sold out. What happened? So basically, no one could buy 3080. And then this guy shows up. And he's in super short supply. Same deal. On your mark, get set. Bam, sold out. Okay. So it's like, this guy, I went to Micro Center. I stood in the line. They're like, okay, here's the voucher. All right, anyone who's here. There's like, we got like I think he said they had like 18 cards. In reality, they ended up having like 23 or something. So I ended up getting a 6900 XT like at the launch at the end of the year after failing so hard with like all the NVIDIA cards and the 6800 XT. I finally succeeded in getting the 6900 XT reference card, the AMD card. And that was a phenomenal graphics card from AMD. The 6900 XT was truly an amazing graphics card when it came out. It was also AMD's first $1,000 graphics card. So lots of stuff launched in the pandemic. We'll talk about some of these things later, but notably Xbox Series X and S and PS5 launched in this year, in that pandemic year. So lots of stuff. Don't forget the 8K GPU, RTX 3090. Yeah, that was also in there. So, I mean, this was the year, guys. This was the last time. It was the most phenomenal time to be a gamer. And it was the pandemic, too. That was what's even more insane. It was the pandemic. So, Arc was never supposed to come out in 2020. Just so you know, FYI, Arc had a 5-year cycle, and Arc started here at the end of 2017. Arc started 2018 and went 5 years. 5 years. So add 5 years to this. That's when it's supposed to come out. Now it did come out. Actually, it did come out early. It did come out early. So it did manage to make it. It was delayed like once because it was supposed to be summer 2022, and it came out the same day as the 4090 in October of 2022. So it did make it. So, but it was a little bit late. It was like 4 months late or something like that. Okay, we will discuss consoles in the second half of the stream because that is a massive topic that we need to talk about. But anyway, so the point that I've been making, AMD's supposed to launch odd numbered years. Clearly, they broke that trend with the RDNA 2 because then what ended up happening was you got RTX 40 and then you had the 7900 XTX in 2022. So it's like, whoa, every 2 years, what's going on? But then 2024, we got, what did we get? Nothing. 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 So this is why people are starting to say that the original model might not always apply because combo breaker, you got nothing in 2024. So, yeah, 2025, we got some like mid-range thing. Like 2025 was last year. So that leads us to 2026. 2026 is, so NVIDIA has mutated because of the whole AI thing. So we know there's no NVIDIA cards this year. The AMD RDNA 5 or whatever they want to call this thing, it should come out in 2026. Now, This memory issue might create a delay, a manufactured delay, just because of how it is. But if you look at the pattern, normally it should be 24 months, 24 to 30 months. But now we're looking at December of this year, of 2022, 2022, when I'm circling this year, 2022, you're now looking at a, what is this, 48 month? 48 month. 48 months. A gap of 48 months between the current flagship of AMD's RDNA graphics cards and when the next one is expected. So this is the reason why I'm saying that technically the window should be Q4 for the new AMD cards. Nvidia obviously is spring of next year. Like that I think is well understood. But AMD should be the end of this year. It should. What I can tell you is RTX 6090 is going to be like May, June 2027 at the earliest. This is the NVIDIA cards. So that's understood. Maybe it's not understood, but now hopefully it is understood by the viewers. But the AMD stuff should come first before the NVIDIA stuff. RDNA 5 was delayed to who said this and why? Why would that have to delay it? I mean, that could delay it, but it's like, why? So 2025. 9000 doesn't count because 9000 is not a flagship product. So you're comparing something that is basically this thing. The 9070 XT is like this type of graphics card. So no, that doesn't count. That falls in line with like the 7800 XT. So no, that doesn't count. There hasn't been a flagship from AMD since the 7900 XTX. So technically, 2024, they missed 2024. So 2026 is now the next time is for the window. But now there's all this stuff about like, oh, the memory, which we already explained, the memory chip problem. But the question is, does the memory problem really affect GDDR7? Like Fake Frames said earlier in the stream, the GDDR7 price is not that bad compared to DDR5. So I personally don't see the need for there to be a delay. So I don't think there should be a delay as far as I'm concerned. Meaning, the successor to the 700 XTX, I would expect it around December of this year. You hate the 4090 launch? There was nothing wrong with the 4090 launch. 2020 was the year not to buy anything. 2020 was the year to buy everything. Actually, we talked about that many, many times, though. 2020 was the magical year. Crypto, I think you're thinking of the wrong year. I think you're thinking of 2021. 2020, guys, I think people are getting 2020 mixed up with 2021. 2021 was the crypto year, the supply shortage year. 2020 was not that year. 2021 was the year of $900 3060 Ti and Newegg Shuffle. That's 2021. So, okay, I still think, so just to close the loop on this, I still think 2026, the new AMD card should come out at the end of the year, December. So I'm going to say December 2026 will be the launch of the, whatever they call this thing. What are they going to call this thing? They're going to have to use some kind of new numbering unless they want to call this the 9900 XTX. The 9900 XTX, or whatever it's going to be called. That thing should come out December of this year. Now, this whole thing about memory, all that stuff, well, guess what? This can be a paper launch and no one can buy it. I mean, they can totally do that. It's going to be very expensive. It's probably going to have an MSRP of like $14.99 or something. So, you know, like, I don't expect this to be one of those things that everyone's just going to be like, oh, you know, everyone needs one, you know, $1,500 starting price or whatever. Somewhere around here, I expect this to be kind of in the ballpark of the launch price of this sort of GPU. So, you know, faster than a 5090. This will be faster than a 5090. Keep that in mind. So it'll probably be in very short supply when it launches. Faster than a 5090, and I'm gonna say the lowest MSRP would be like $14.99. So, yeah, because you think about this. We're talking 48 months, guys. We're talking 2 generations. 2 generations. So that means that, I mean, this is very, very different from like 6900 XT to 7900 XT. 6900 XT to 7900 XT equals 24 months. 24 months. 7900 XTX to what we're just going to say 9900 XTX is a 48-month window. So you would expect the 9900 XT to be faster than the 5090. Because we're talking double generation skip. We're talking skipping a generation. If you have 4 years to build something as opposed to 2 years to build something, it's going to have a giant leap. I don't think anyone has taken that into consideration at this point. So yeah, this thing is definitely going to be faster than a 5090. It's had 48 months by the time it comes out. Assuming it launches at the end of this year, in December of this year. Okay, so that is that. So this is well understood. And these are not some like crazy expectations. These are normal expectations to have. Because, let me see. Let me skip to the hardware. There was an article in here. It was like, where is this thing? I mean, we already kind of saw it last week at CES. Is it here? Yeah. So 2 nanometer. It's going to be 2 nanometer. Now, I don't know which foundry it's going to be built at, but it's going to be 2 nanometer from somebody. TSMC is expected to start production. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be somebody's 2 nanometer. Yeah, right here. Here it is. So this one, Helios. Yeah, there we go. 2 nanometer. And we already know because of the Helios thing that was talked about at CES, this whole thing that was mentioned. If you guys remember MI 450, whatever the thing that they showed off, that's basically the thing. So we already kind of have info on this thing, and this thing is no joke in terms of like how powerful it is. So yeah, basically what I'm saying is totally within the realm of normal expectations. Okay. So I think that's it. Like, what else were we going to talk about on this stream besides the GPU? So we talked about GPU supply. We talked about DRAM. We did that. We did the Strix Halo thing. So I guess gaming consoles is the only thing left to talk about. And we're already almost at 90 minutes. So I guess let's just discuss the consoles. So basically what I've done, because of all this depressing stuff with computer hardware, I've basically gone back to retro gaming. If you guys tune in to the weekend live streams, we've been doing retro console gaming on this channel recently. So this is the GameCube that I have. So recently, I dug out my old gaming consoles. And I found that there were a lot of issues with my consoles because I hadn't used them in so long. So I couldn't tell if it's just, if you what is it saying? Use it or lose it. It's one of those things. Yeah, use it or lose it. Because I haven't used the GameCube in, I don't know, like a decade. It's been a really long time. So it wasn't working. I'll tell you what I did to fix it though, because I got it working again. So my GameCube, let's delete all of this. We don't need any of this stuff anymore. So the GameCube had a problem. My GameCube, for reference, is DOL, short for Dolphin. It's a DOL 001. So the GameCube, let's talk about the Nintendo GameCube. Nintendo GameCube, project name Dolphin. Hence the reason why when you look at the sticker, the GameCube sticker on the bottom of the console, it will say, for the hardware name, DOL 001. So there's 2 variants of this. DOL 001 or DOL 101. The original GameCube, so the way you can kind of tell without looking at the sticker, is on the back of the GameCube. If the GameCube has both the digital AV out and analog AV out, it is the first iteration. It is the DOL 001 or DOL 001. Now, if it only has the analog out, it doesn't have the digital out, then it is a 101. It's the newer, cost-reduced version. Regardless, I have the original one, so this one, and it wasn't reading the discs. So I go and I put Super Smash Bros. Melee in there, or whatever game in there. It doesn't read the disc. It tries to read it. I can hear the laser spin up. I know that the laser lights up. I can see the red light. So, the laser works, but it's not able to read the disc. So I start researching online. Actually, when I did my console collection video, somebody mentioned in the video, in the comment section, they said that I could try adjusting the laser. Now, I don't think okay, there's this thing on the circuit board for the disk reader called a potentiometer. Potentiometer. It is essentially a variable resistor. But the thing about it is I don't think it's actually changing the power of the laser. Meaning, I don't think by adjusting it, either increasing resistance or decreasing resistance, I don't think it actually changes the power output of the laser. I could be wrong, but I did more research on it, and I really think that what that does is that adjusts the logic circuit's impedance value. So the DAL001, this is what's really strange. So, okay, first of all, I need to put something up here. We're going to talk about later. CD laser, DVD laser, Blu-ray laser. So CD, we'll just say CD. DVD is 650 nanometer. What is CD's wavelength? CD disk wavelength 500. It says 880 on Google. I don't know if that's right though. I guess I'll believe that. 780 nanometer. And then Blu-ray. Blu-ray wavelength is 4. So it's 405 nanometer, according to Google. So these are Google numbers. Okay, we're going to come back to those later. But essentially, the GameCube Doll 001. Okay, so what was the range? Okay, so they say, this is according to online research, the range of the potentiometer's resistance should be in the range of 450 to 600 ohms. For the DAL 001. For the other one, the newer one, it's actually 150 to 250 ohms. Whatever this means. Now, I don't think this is the power of the laser, though. I really think what this is referring to is the logic circuit board's impedance value that the resistor is part of on the circuit. So, basically, the fix for a GameCube that can't read discs, there's a couple things you can do. Number one, you can replace the entire board with an entire new disc reader. So that's like number one. Number two, you can adjust the potentiometer to fall slightly outside this range on the low side. The higher the resistance, the harder it is to read. The lower the resistance, the easier it is to read. But really, the way I think about this, changing this, I don't think this actually changes the output power of the laser. I don't think this is changing the laser bias current. I think what this is doing, when I adjust the potentiometer, we're effectively doing the same thing that we do when we're overclocking DDR5 RAM and we're trying to get 4 sticks of DDR5 dual rank running at a higher speed. Because effectively, the trick, for those that have watched my videos on that subject, basically the videos that are like how to run 192 gigabytes of DDR5 at 6000, or how to run 128 gigabytes of DDR5 at 6000, like those type of videos, we're effectively doing something similar when we adjust the potentiometer on the GameCube. Because so let's think about it like this. You have a transmission line, and we've already illustrated this in the video, so we're going to illustrate it again. You have a transmission line. You have the source. You have the destination. So you transmit to the other side. Okay, so you're sending, and then you might receive data back. Now, this circuit has an impedance value associated with it for signal integrity reasons. So when you reduce the resistance, you make it easier for the signal to go to the other end. The signal becomes more powerful because you have less resistance. There is a negative aspect of doing this, though. The negative thing is something called reflection, electrical reflection. So if the resistance is not strong enough to attenuate the noise and the ripples, you can get reflection effects where the signal basically bounces before it reaches the other end properly. So this is sort of the thing that is at risk of happening when you lower the internal resistor, the variable resistor in the GameCube. So you could end up with errors. Now, the GameCube doesn't have any sort of built-in storage, so you're not really going to corrupt data, and the game is typically running in real time, but you could cause the game to have instability. You could also corrupt your save file if you write to the memory card and you have errors in the data. So it's this sort of tweak with the potentiometer to get disks to read is something you can do, but it is more of like a temporary fix for the GameCube. Now, I tested mine, and the strange thing about mine is I have a 001, which implies that I'm supposed to have a calibrated factory potentiometer in the range of 450 to 600 ohms. When I measured it with my multimeter, I was reading around 230 ohms on my GameCube, on my dull 001. So when I saw this, I was like, what's going on here? Why is this so low? Shouldn't it be somewhere around 500 ohms? Why am I at like half of that value? Because that would imply, with this sort of reading, this implies that my GameCube is calibrated like one of the newer ones. One of the ones that doesn't have the digital out. So I was like, wait, why? What? But I at first I was confused, so I was like, okay, maybe I just ignore these numbers that I'm seeing online, or just treat it like the total range is like 150 to 600, because I didn't know what to do. So I started lowering mine in increments of 10 ohms and testing the discs over and over again until I could get it to read the disc. Now the problem for me was I got my disc to read at 114 ohms. Disc reads. All the way down at 114 ohms. But I don't trust this long term. I see this as a band-aid fix because now we could end up with corrupted saves due to signal integrity issues due to reflections happening with the logic circuit board. So that brings me to the other root cause of this, like the real root cause, supposedly. Assuming there is not a problem with the laser, from what I could tell, there's nothing wrong with the laser. Instead, because if you remember, the GameCube is using some kind of like non-standard DVD reader. It's using a wavelength, a red laser. A red laser is typically around the 650 nanometer range, which means it is similar to a DVD laser. And when the DVD laser is not reading, usually that means either the laser itself is defective or dying due to age, which could also be the reality here. But the thing is, by reducing the ohms and getting it to read, it kind of tells me that it's not the actual physical laser, there's something else. So, instead of using a standard design for a Blu-ray, or not Blu-ray, a DVD reader, Nintendo went with this weird setup where they've got this logic board that has these capacitors. There's actually 10 capacitors on the logic board for the disk reader. Now, according to the internet, the capacitors that were used in the GameCube from that whole era, the 6th generation of consoles, were known to wear out over time. Now, what happens when a capacitor ages? A capacitor is a device. What is it called? I'm trying to find the name of the internal resistance number. There's a thing, ESR. Capacitor has internal resistance. Capacitors have internal resistance, just like how resistors have resistance. But capacitors are not supposed to have a very high resistance. But as a capacitor ages, the equivalent series that's the term. The ESR increases as it gets older. And keep in mind, this GameCube is from the year, what does it say? Regardless, it was manufactured in like 2002 or 2003. Or maybe 2004 at the latest. This GameCube. So we're talking about something that is what, like 20-something years old. 20-something years old. So I would imagine, and there's all this talk about the capacitors. They get old, and when they get old, their equivalent series resistance goes up, which means the resistance goes up. So the whole idea behind the tweak with the potentiometer, where you reduce the resistance on that resistor, you're reducing it until the disk reads. You're compensating for the fact that the capacitors have increased resistance. The capacitors' resistance goes up. Therefore, on your potentiometer, you need to decrease to compensate for that increase in resistance on the capacitors. And then, in my case, when I dropped it all the way down to 114 ohms on the potentiometer, all of a sudden I can read my games. So it makes sense from a physics standpoint. If your capacitors are in your circuit and they start increasing their resistance, you need to decrease your resistor's resistance to compensate for that. So the dielectric in the capacitors in this GameCube is basically aging out. And the permanent fix, and this is going to be like a weekend project for me, I would have to basically I'd have to desolder all those 10 capacitors and then just replace them with new capacitors. That is the ultimate fix. Then recalibrate my my potentiometer back to either 230 ohms or somewhere in the neighborhood of where it's technically supposed to be, and see if that works. So, because the thing is, you don't want your capacitors to be going bad. And meaning this is just a band-aid fix. Decreasing potentiometer. You don't want to leave it like this. Now, technically for me, personally, I don't use the GameCube that much, so it's probably fine to just leave it as is. But the downside of leaving it like this long term is that the capacitors are there to help filter out electrical noise. They're there to rectify signals, to keep them stable. The ability to read a 0 and a 1 in a digital circuit, capacitors really help eliminating things like ripple current effects. So if your capacitors are failing and they have increased resistance, they're not doing their job, you could potentially end up with either data corruption on your memory cards when you save error data, or worse, it doesn't filter out like ripple, and the circuit eventually goes bad, and it fails in some other capacity. And you don't want the logic units to go bad, because then you're basically screwed and you have to replace the board, and you're better off buying a refurbished console at that point. So this is definitely not a permanent fix, but it is a workaround that can get the GameCube to at least play a game again. So this is kind of like one of the things that I've been doing earlier this week, was trying to fix my GameCube. And I was able to get it to work, but like I said, it is a Band-Aid fix. It's not a permanent fix. Or the capacitor explodes all over the part. Would it explode though? Capacitors hold power. Anyway, so that's the GameCube. That was one of the consoles. So the other console I had to fix up was the PlayStation 2. So my PS2, and maybe you guys, maybe some of the people watching the stream can basically help me on this one. So the PS2 is a strange one. Like, let me tell you about this PlayStation 2. So I have the original PlayStation 2. So it's the fat one. You know, if you guys watched my console collection video, my PS2 essentially looks like this when standing vertically. You know, this is the shape of the PS2. So here's the disc tray. The disc tray is like right here. So the PS2 has a strange problem. When I insert the disc, and this is a PS2 DVD, so think Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X is the game that I use to verify if it works. So I put the disc in, and when the console is vertical like this, it can't read the disc. I can see it in the browser, reading disc. Then it stops. Then after like 25 seconds, reading disc. It tries to read the disc again, and then it just stops. Then it tries to read the disc again. It's never able to read. Now, I go and I move this horizontal. Is there a way for me to like rotate this? I don't think I can rotate this. Wait, yeah, I can. Rotate. Yeah. So when I make it horizontal, I lay the PS2 down horizontally, all of a sudden it can read the disc every single time. So as long as the PS2 is horizontal, it can read the DVDs. I don't know why, but when I have it vertical, it can't read the discs. I don't know what's happening to it. Is that a sign that the laser is going bad, or what is wrong with it? You guys tell me. I couldn't figure this one out. I did take it apart. I took apart the whole console to replace the coin battery. It has a CR2032 coin battery, a lithium battery, that keeps track of time. And mine had died a long time ago. So I was tired of that, and I was like, the fact that it's not reading horizontal or vertically, I guess I'm just gonna open it up and figure out what's going on. I couldn't figure out anything with the disc tray, like it seemed normal to me, so I don't know what to do with that. But it reads horizontal, it doesn't read vertically. I don't know why. I mean, it's a very old console, so it's just, I don't know. If the laser has a motor to line up with the tracks, then orientation can affect it. Oh, you mean the laser itself is going bad? Or the motor? From what I could tell, I couldn't see anything wrong with the motor. Now, that brings me to the next console. PS3. Oh, PS3. PS3, man. If there was ever a console in this world that we could consider a high maintenance console, the PS3 Fat, the original 60 gigabyte PS3 and the 20 gigabyte PS3, and maybe the E model, the 80 gigabyte. Basically, if a PS3 can play PS2 DVDs, that is the most high maintenance console in the world. That thing does the exact same thing. When the PS Triple, we're talking about that PS Triple now. So the PS Triple, this PS Triple, let's say it's like, well, first of all, it's taller. It's taller. It's rounded, and it's got like extra layers. PS triple. So the PS3, when the PS3 is vertical like this, my PS3 also, for some weird reason, here's where it gets really weird. So the PS3, when it's vertical, it also cannot read PS2 or DVD. Now, when it's vertical, it can read Blu-rays and CDs. PS1 games, it'll read them. PS3 games, it'll read them every single time. But you put in a PS2 game, I tried multiple PS2 games. I tried a DVD. I think I tried Lord of the Rings, widescreen, Return of the King as the test DVD. It didn't read none of them when it was vertical. Then I go and I do the trick where I lay it horizontal, and lo and behold, it reads the PS2 disc when it's horizontal. So I don't know what is going on. Like, why is it that DVD 650 nanometer is so gravity defying and just doesn't want to work on these old consoles when they're in their vertical position, but when they're in their horizontal position, they both work. And it's only DVDs. I put a CD in there. It's vertical, it works. It's horizontal, it works. Blu-ray PS3 games, I use Soul Calibur 4 as the test Blu-ray. Vertical works. Horizontal works. DVD, vertical doesn't work. Horizontal works. So what is it about DVDs that make them so much harder to read than Blu-rays and CDs? When I looked at the nanometer, I was like, wait a minute, this is like in the middle. Why would this one have a problem? If anything, I would think Blu-ray is the hardest one to read. But the PS3 is having no issues reading a Blu-ray when it's vertical. So, I mean, I need help on this because, like, I don't know what to do about this. Like, this is a weird one. This is a weird one. DVDs, when vertical, don't want to work. And we got the PS3 right over here. Well, it's heavy. I'm not going to try to pick it up from over here. Dual layer discs are hard to read. I tried single layer and it did the same thing. That's a good point though. I can test a dual layer DVD. I can test a dual layer Blu-ray and a dual layer DVD. Is Final Fantasy X dual layer? I don't think it is though. Is Final Fantasy X dual layer DVD? Oh, it is. Final Fantasy X is a dual layer. Okay. But you know what? I tried Xenosaga 3 Disc 1. Well, okay. You bring up a good point. I need to test dual layer versus single layer. How come Blu-ray didn't have a problem though? I cleaned the laser yesterday. Same thing. Didn't change anything. So yeah, I did clean the laser with a Q-tip and isopropyl alcohol, and it didn't help. Same behavior. So this whole thing about dual layer, though. Yeah, but then how come Blu-ray works? So the weird thing about the PS3, the fat PS3 that I have, all three of these are using the same photodiode. Like when I opened it up, it was one physical circle. You know the little lens thing? There's only one. On the new PS3 Slim, I say new, but it's the newer PS3. So the PS3 Slim has a Blu-ray and a DVD and CD reader, like in the actual disc, in the disc reader. The fat PS3 only has one. It has one for all three. So I don't understand why CD works, DVD doesn't work, Blu-ray works. But then when you go lay it horizontal, DVDs magically work all of a sudden. So why is it that the DVD is so hard to read when the console's vertical? Analog sensors have a range. Yeah, isn't that what these are for? So again, CD works, Blu-ray works, DVD doesn't work. I mean, the behavior is similar to the PS2. When I put a DVD in the PS2, if it's vertical, it doesn't read. I lay it horizontal, it reads. So I can play my game. The PS3, same thing. I lay it horizontal, I can play my PS2 game. I stand it vertical, I can't play my PS2 game. So, okay, yeah, gravity, okay. But again, why does the CD work in both orientations, and so does the Blu-ray? Why is it that the DVD specifically doesn't work when the console is vertical? And it wasn't always like this. I know for a fact when the console was much younger, it could read DVDs when mounted vertically. So something is changing in the console, and I'm not sure what. So the question is it the laser? Is there some... I don't know if it's... it's hard for me to say that it's a logic board issue. I really think it's a physical problem with the laser. How could it be the motor, though? Again, if it's the motor, why does the CD work? And why does the Blu-ray work? If it's the motor. Some discs are harder to read than others. We're talking about optical media, guys. We're not talking about a hard drive. If the tray lacks retaining... no. I don't see how it could be a problem with the motor or something with the tray. Because like I said, Blu-ray disc, CD disc, they're physically the same form factor as DVD. Those two work. Only DVD doesn't work. Both DVD and PS2. Now, one thing I haven't tested a purple PS2 disc. Because remember, early PS2 games were on CD. And those were the purple disc. The clear discs are the DVDs. So I haven't tested one of those. So I need to make a note of this. I need to test single layer DVD, test dual layer DVD, test purple PS2 disc, which is a CD. I don't think I have that many games that are on a purple disc though. Huh. Does anybody know what game? Oh, I think Final Fantasy 13. Does Final Fantasy 13 use a dual layer Blu-ray disc? Oh, test Final Fantasy 13. Test Final Fantasy 13 dual layer Blu-ray. I need to test that one, just to fully test the Blu-ray. Okay. So these are things that I need to do, because I haven't figured this out with the PS3. Like I said, guys, man, the PS3 is the highest maintenance console. The fat OG PS3 is the highest maintenance console in the world. It is so high maintenance. The piano black can scratch so easily. The thing can literally die due to very bad choice of underfill for the RSX that NVIDIA designed. I mean, I know all about that. We talked about that in one of the gaming live streams. Same thing with the red ring of death on the Xbox 360. That's 7th generation. So I powered up my 8th generation. Everything works. So meaning PS4, PS4 Pro. Those didn't have anything wrong with them. My PS3 Slim, I powered it on. Nothing's wrong with it. It reads the Blu-rays. Now, the funny thing about the PS3 Slim, it can't play PS2 games, so I had to test a DVD movie, and my PS3 Slim reads like Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. That was the test DVD that I put in there. It reads it, and it's in vertical position, and it works totally fine. So it's the old fat PS3 that's having these problems. But my PS3 Slim, it can read vertical for DVD, it can read horizontal for DVD. So the PS3 Slim has no problems. It's only the older PS3 Fat that's having this issue. So I suspect that I have to replace the laser. So I have a feeling I have to replace the laser, which is going to be annoying. Shouldn't be too hard to do, but man, just having to... Every time I gotta open that thing up, it can be anxiety inducing because you know that the console's so old and so fragile and has those old ribbon cables. Man. Yeah, you need to check on your old electronics. Optical drives, man, they don't last forever. I've taken them for granted. I mean, heck, GameCube wasn't reading GameCube disc. PS2 won't read PS2 games when it's vertical. Okay, I need to test the PS2 with dual layer versus single layer. Yeah, you guys make a really good point though with dual layer. I didn't think of that. Dual layer versus single layer. Yeah, because I'll tell you what I've been using. This is my test set. My PS1 disc. This is basically my test. PS1. Gundam Battle Assault 2. Gundam Battle Assault 2. That's the PS1 disc that I test. PS2. Final Fantasy X. And PS3. Soul Calibur 4. And then if I'm testing a DVD, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. This is what I use. These are the 4 discs that I'm using to test these optical drives. So people know what I'm using. This is the exact hardware. So you guys are telling me that this is dual layer DVD. This is single layer Blu-ray. This is CD. But Lord of the Rings Return of the King is a single layer DVD, and that wasn't working either. So I don't know. The problem is the fat OG one is the only one with the PS2 SoC in it. Yeah, I know, man. I know. And so, okay, I think I have too many PS3s at this point. Because PS3 is my favorite console. It is so high maintenance, but it has become my favorite console in the last like couple of weeks. I didn't really think of it too much as my favorite console, but it has, working on it so much these last few days, despite the issues, it has become my favorite console. Specifically, the old fat one is my favorite. The Slim is good. The Slim is nice and quiet. It uses like, I don't know, like 70 watts max or whatever. Whereas the PS3 Fat, guys, I'm probably going to make a video showing the power consumption of the PS3 Fat versus the PS3 Slim versus the Super Slim. PS3 Fat pulls 200 watts from the wall. Like, it's funny because it uses more power playing a PS2 game than a PS3 game. When I'm playing Final Fantasy X on my PS3, it's pulling like 220 watts. 220 watts to run a PS2 game from like 2001. And when you're playing a PS3 game, with the Blu-ray disc, it's pulling like 180 to 200 watts while gaming. So yeah, I'm not surprised these things had reliability problems. I mean, my eBay PS3 died in 2014. I kept it. I'm not gonna get rid of it. I mean, it's my PS3 fat. Like, why would I get rid of it? I bought it off of eBay. You know, that's like the most legit way to get one of these. And then the 80 gig. Okay, so like here's my PS3. My MGS4 bundle PS3 E01 is in a box for storage. It's been in a box for storage for like 15 years. So, like, that thing is in a box. It is like in mint condition in its box. This is the only one that I ever bought brand new. On June 12, 2008, $500 from Best Buy, complete in box with with the first DualShock 3. There it is. It's an E01. It is an 80 gigabyte. This is the one that has the Emotion engine physically removed. So this one has partial backwards compatibility with PS2. It has the PS2 graphics synthesizer on the motherboard. So it does about 75% backwards compatibility on my actual PS3 that I purchased brand new. So the second PS3 that I got it in the same, it was like the end of 2008. So 60 gigabyte OG eBay. I got this one off of eBay. This one is now deceased. This is the one that died to the yellow light of death, the dreaded yellow light of death in 2014. So that one, it's still around. It's extra parts, I guess. Like, it's extra parts. Now, so here's the thing. I took the disk drive out of this one. I transplanted it into the one that I'm complaining about, which we're going to get to, and it still didn't fix the problem. I mean, it actually improved the problem. So let's keep going. So 20 gigabyte. So this one is a A01 from eBay. This one is a 20 gigabyte B00 Japan launch model, which I can't really do anything with it because I don't have any Japanese PS2 games, so it's kind of pointless, but I have one, but okay. All right, then we have another 60 gigabyte A01, and then I have another 20 gigabyte B01, and then I have the Slim, so I have a 160 gigabyte 2501A, I believe. That's a Slim, and then I have whatever the Super Slim is, 250 gigabyte Super Slim. Okay, so these are my PS3s. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 PS3s apparently. Wow. It helps to write this stuff down because I didn't even know I had 7 PS3s. Now, one of them's dead. One of them is deceased. So this one doesn't count anymore. He's dead. So technically I have 6. What is that? 2, 4. Yeah, 6 working PS3s. Now, what I can tell you is this Metal Gear Solid one, this one can still install Linux. This one is on firmware. This is on firmware 1.55. So this one definitely can install Linux. Because I've never used it for like 15 years. It's been in its original box asleep for like more than a decade. So that one can still install Linux. The rest of them cannot install Linux because the rest of them are on like whatever the latest. The Japan one is on, I think like 7.7 or no 4.76 or something, and then this one is also somewhere in the same neighborhood on the firmware. This one, when I got this one was on like, I believe it was on like 355. But I stupidly updated this one literally yesterday to like 492 official firmware. So this one's now on the latest firmware. because out of all of them, okay, this one is obviously on the latest firmware, and this one, I don't know what firmware this one's on. So this one is the one that I'm planning to use as like a primary one. Because this is the 20 gigabyte. This is the one that has that notorious default fan curve that targets 80 degrees Celsius to cook the CPU and cause the yellow light of death to happen really fast. So the funny thing is, the 20 gig, the rare 20 gig, is the one that people, there's like an urban rumor that the 20 gig doesn't suffer from yellow light of death as frequently as the other fat PS3s. That is completely untrue, because the 20 gig, if anything, the 20 gig is the most susceptible to the yellow light of death because it has the most relaxed fan curve from its firmware. It will allow the CPU, the cell, to go all the way up to 80 degrees Celsius before it really, really ramps the fan. And that causes it to basically, like, die. so prematurely. So that's the 20 gig. That's the one that I want to main as my main PS3. Yeah, it sounds dumb, because it's like, oh, I could end up, like, killing this PS3 because this is the one that cooks itself or whatever. But it's got that black trim, which is the quietest one. The 20, well, no, that's not true. The quietest one is the Slim and the Super Slim. Basically, the ones that can't play PS2 games. Those are the quietest ones. So, the newest ones. Those are quiet. Actually, this is the quietest. The Super Slim, it depends. If you're not playing a disc, if you're not using a disc to play a game, the Super Slim is probably the quietest. But if you are playing a Blu-ray disc, the Slim is the quietest, because the Super Slim has that dumb little door that doesn't really provide much noise cancellation from the spinning Blu-ray drive. So, I would say the Slim. The Slim's the quietest. The B01 is the quietest out of the fat PS3s, but keep in mind, it's quiet for a very, very bad reason. So, you don't want the fat PS3s to be quiet. If they're quiet, they are not going to last very long, because they need to be loud to expel the heat. They need to keep the temperature under 70, ideally under 70 degrees Celsius, but anywhere from like 75 and under is fine. It's really when the GPU on the fat PS3 is exposed to temperatures above 75 Celsius for extended periods of time that will accelerate their demise. And it is not a question of if they will die. It is a question of when they will die. Because this is a manufacturing defect from NVIDIA back in the 2000s decade. Hence the reason why, and Sony wasn't the only company that was affected by this. Apple, the notable customers of NVIDIA that were affected at the time include Sony, Apple, Dell, and I think some other laptop manufacturers may have been affected. But definitely those three were affected. And Apple sued NVIDIA. There was a whole lawsuit about it. And I don't know if Sony was involved in that or not, but Apple definitely sued NVIDIA. And this is the reason why Apple doesn't use NVIDIA anymore for their products. So, but that's all something in the past. So now you guys know, yeah, Apple doesn't use NVIDIA in any of their products because of the yellow light of death. Because the yellow light of death affected Apple's products too. So, and the root cause, if we really want to get into this, so I mean, I've explained this on the previous, I didn't explain this on Tech Thursdays, so we're actually going to explain on Tech Thursdays. So the reason why the yellow light of death happens, and this is also true for the red ring of death. So the red ring of death and the yellow light of death is very simple. It is a temperature thing. So there's a range. So we're going to talk about the glass transition. The glass transition state. also known as TG. And then what happens here is you have the temperature. So let's use some numbers. 70C, 75, 80C. And then we'll just put some other ones, 65C. Okay. So what ends up happening with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, this is, and also Apple's Silicon or Apple's laptops, Dell's laptops during this time, anything that had an NVIDIA GPU in this time. You have the chip. We're looking at a 3D cross section, looking at it laying flat on the circuit board. You have the motherboard. You have the motherboard down here. You have the solder joints. Okay, you have the interposer. Yeah, you got the interposer. And then you have the solder joints. So you have solder joints, BGA joints, holding the interposer to the motherboard in the socket. That's normal. But then you also have these solder joints that are holding the actual chip. In this case, the graphics card, the GPU of the PS Triple, holding it to the interposer. Now, if you design your chip like this, it will probably live 3 years, and then it'll die. So what NVIDIA did, and this is normal for chip design of this time frame, and they still do this today, NVIDIA filled it up so the layer between the actual GPU and the interposer, they put an epoxy resin. An epoxy resin. Also referred to as an underfill. It goes underneath the die. And it encases the solder joints that the chip uses to hold itself to the interposer. This is known as flip chip design in the 2000s decade. Now, this underfill. What is underfill? It is basically refined sand, for lack of a better word. Sand, also known as silicon or silica glass. It is a refined silica glass. It is made of silicon. That is the underfill in green. So think of it like you have the solder joints encased in this underfill. It's like a glue, but it's actually refined silicon sand. And it is there to support the solder joints of the GPU. This is also true of the CPU. But you guys know IBM created, they are the ones who did the design for the CPU on the PS3. There was the cell. And the cell did not have a problem. Meaning IBM did the correct amount of R&D to ensure that the type of materials that they selected would be able to withstand the sort of operating temperatures that the chip was expected to operate at in the field. Now, supposedly NVIDIA did the same thing. Clearly that wasn't true, because it just so happens that the underfill that they used could not handle the high heat, the high operating temperatures that the chip would reach while under full load. This comes in, this introduces the concept of CTE, the coefficient of thermal expansion. What happens when things heat up? Most materials, when they heat up, they expand. They stretch out. They spread out. The measurement of that stretching out, because the molecules, the atoms want to spread out because the energy state changes as the temperature changes. Because the way I think of it is like, imagine if you're in a room with a whole bunch of people, shoulder to shoulder. You're shoulder to shoulder with people packed in a small room. There's no way out. You're stuck in a room with all these strangers, shoulder to shoulder, and all of a sudden someone turns the heater on. They set the heater to like, I don't know, 40 degrees Celsius. And you're in a room full of people, shoulder to shoulder. You can't move, and it starts heating up. So naturally, you're going to want to like spread out. You're not going to want to stand shoulder to shoulder when the room starts getting close to 40 degrees Celsius. This is the coefficient of thermal expansion. So this is the thing that would happen to not only the underfill, but the interposer, as well as the actual RSX chip, as well as the solder joints themselves. They all have a measured coefficient of thermal expansion, or a CTE. The problem specifically was with the underfill that NVIDIA used. This underfill could not handle this temperature range, which was the typical operating range of the PlayStation 3's logic components. So like the CPU, the GPU. So what happens? Here, how am I going to illustrate this? The coefficient of thermal expansion, we'll use purple again. So the coefficient of thermal expansion, it looks something like this. Something like this. Meaning, once it hits around 70, like in the mid 70s, let me redraw this. It's not that bad. It's more like this. It's more like that. So once you hit this temperature region, all of a sudden, the material like rapidly changes. The coefficient hits, it's very active at this temperature range. Now that also means that your glass transition from a strong, solid, reliable underfill that can hold those solder joints, it can support them and hold them together while they're being exposed to the high heat from the GPU. What happens to the sturdiness? It goes down. It goes down rapidly, meaning your silica glass, your underfill, actually, maybe I should have used green. Let's use green. The underfill transitions. It transitions from solid to liquid. It softens. It softens. When it softens, it cannot support the joints of the chip. The solder joints are now exposed to extra stress. Not only are they exposed to the high temperature, now the surrounding underfill that is supposed to reinforce and support them when the chip is under load, it basically harms them. It liquefies around them. And it doesn't exactly become a liquid, but it becomes soft. It becomes unsupportive. It becomes very weak. So it does not reinforce the joints. it has the opposite effect. It starts expanding because remember, the underfill has a thermal expansion as well. And when it starts expanding, it physically starts pushing on the joints. So now the joints are no longer being supported by the underfill. In fact, they're actually extra pressure is being put on the joints. Instead of relieving pressure, it's adding pressure to these solder joints of the RSX, the GPU inside the PS Triple, the original fat PS3. Yes, the most valuable one that can play PS2 games. Every single one of those PS3s has this problem. Every single one of them. This is the reason why they say that the yellow light of death on a launch PS3 is not a matter of if it will happen. It is a matter of when it will happen. Because this is a mathematical certainty that is occurring constantly every time the console is in use. So the only reason why the ones that I have here are all still alive and well is simply because I just haven't used them that much. The one that I used hardcore during the 7th generation is long dead. It succumbed to this exact problem. That was ultimately its fate. So it's the same thing with the Microsoft Xbox 360. So if we were to illustrate the Xbox 360, so 360, so the 360 suffered a horrible death because the early 360s, that is, the ones that would Red Ring of Death, because Microsoft set. Now, okay, I want to point out, NVIDIA is not to blame for the Red Ring of Death. NVIDIA had nothing to do with the Xbox 360. This was a Microsoft design choice. I don't think it was fully vetted, and it was launched very early. But anyway, the 360 had a target temperature of 80 degrees Celsius on the 360. The Xbox 360 targets 80 degrees Celsius. Actually, I believe it's actually 83 degrees. 83 degrees Celsius for the Xbox 360. So what does that mean? And the materials that they used were the standard materials that TSMC was suggested to use, and TSMC's packaging partners would use those materials. So we all know what happened. You start playing a game. Xbox 360 starts heating up. It heats up. It heats up. It keeps heating up. It keeps heating up. Watch out now. Watch out now. Watch out. Hold on. Slow down. Cool down. Hold on. Oh, no. Okay, we're playing Halo 3. Hold on. Halo 3. Uh-oh. Hold on. Uh-oh. 83 Celsius. Okay, it's achieved its target temperature. The fan is ramping. To hold it. Hold on. The glass transition. Coefficient. CTE. Glass transition. Cool it down. Oh, no. Red ring of death. Artifacting all over the screen. Dead. Red ring of death. Killed it. Red ring of death. Bam. Game over. You died. That's how the 360 would die. Because they're like, man, let's not make it too loud for the gamers. Let's target 83 degrees. Whoa, dude, hold on. 83 is like way over the limit. Hold on. Whoa, 83. Whoa, it goes, whoa. And here's what made it even worse, guys. What they found is that simply playing a game and let it heat up is actually by itself not going to cause the red ring of death. Just by making it heat up doesn't actually kill the console. It is the first action that causes it to lead to its demise. It is actually the crossing over, back and forth. This back and forth crossing over, making it expand, contract. So basically, you think about it. You play a game, it heats up. Then you go into a lobby menu. You go use the bathroom, the console cools down because you're in the lobby menu, it's not under full load, so it kind of cools off a little bit. Then you get into another match, Halo 3. Oh, here it goes. High heat. High heat. Okay, round over. Okay, hold on. Talking to people on Xbox Live. Okay, round 3. Oh, here we go. Up, heat it up. So this continue crossing the threshold over and over and over. That is going to kill it. That's going to kill it because the joints are getting stressed out so much because they're being crushed. They're physically being crushed under high heat. Then when it cools down a bit, then they're pulled apart. Crushed, then pulled. Crushed, then pulled apart. That is exactly what was happening to the joints, the solder joints on the Xbox 360. They were being stretched and smashed and stretched and smashed. So it's like they're just being stretched. And so think of it like you take a paper clip in your hand and you bend the metal over and over and over. You keep bending that metal. What do you think is going to happen to that paper clip as you continuously bend the metal? At the joint where you're causing the bend, the metal will eventually give out and separate. And that is ultimately what the red ring of death was. The solder joints just couldn't hold on. They just couldn't hold on. It was just too much. It's too much. Now, what about the PS Triple? PS Triple is different. PS Triple. How did this one die? PS3. Here we go. And we got to specify, this is that OG 60 gigabyte, the one worth the most money on eBay. PS Triple. Can play PS2 games. So you take the PS Triple. Okay, let's play Metal Gear Solid 4. Or let's play SOCOM or Final Fantasy 13 or Killzone 2 or Ridge Racer 7, whatever, doesn't matter. You fire up one of those PS Triple games. It starts heating up. First of all, there's a big difference. The PlayStation 3's cooling system on the old fat model was very robust. This thing was no joke. It had a car's HVAC fan inside the console. It had a mITX 19 blade fan in there that goes into automotive. So this thing's a tank. The Japanese engineers, they built this thing to sustain. So basically this thing goes up, it heats up. We start playing Killzone 2. Let's go. Okay, round 1. It's heating up. Oh, it's getting up there a bit. Okay, hold on. Okay. So the PS3, the temperature, notice that it's doing a better job at containing the temperature. It's holding its temperature below that lethal 83 Celsius that Microsoft had set on their fan curve. So the PS3 had a more aggressive fan curve that would stave off these lethal temperatures. But you think about this, if someone's gaming hardcore every single, couple of hours daily, or they'll do a long stint on the weekend or whatever, it's gonna be exposed to the bad temperatures. Basically, it's still gonna hit the glass transition, the coefficient of thermal expansion. It'll get up to 75 Celsius. Now, you couple that with dust. So someone lives in a dirty environment, there's a lot of dust in the room, they don't clean their room regularly. Maybe they have a pet cat or something, there's fur and whatever, dander everywhere. All that stuff will cause the cooling system to degrade in efficiency because I mean, it's the physics of the world that we live in. Dust and things like that, they'll get in the console's heatsink, they'll cause it to have to run hotter, or they'll cause the fan to ramp up more aggressively to hold the temperature. So a brand new PS3 is going to typically get to 73 to 75 on the RSX. But you add a bunch of dust into that heatsink, and if you're not cleaning it regularly, man, that thing's going to get up to 78, and at that point, it's not good. So there are lots of reasons why the PS3 would end up dying, but the fact remains, the 360's Red Ring of Death was so obvious. Everyone knew about it. People who didn't have a 360, I didn't have a 360 in that era, I knew about it. I knew at least like 5 or 6 people that all had 360s that all died to the Red Ring of Death. And that kind of prevented me from getting one myself. Because I wasn't about to buy something that was an unreliable piece of junk. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the sort of impression that I got. Meanwhile, the PS3, it was better at maintaining the temperature because it was designed, at least the cooling system was designed better. However, it would still eventually die. It would eventually die because it was being exposed to this lethal zone where the damage was done. It was being exposed to that radiation, you know, like, it's gonna die. It's just not a matter of dying immediately. It'll last for several years and then it'll die. So my PS3, I used it hardcore, and I remember it heating up my room. I still remember playing Tekken Tag Tournament 2 in like fall 2012 on ranked for like 2 hours, and my room, I kid you not, the PS3 would heat up my room, and I didn't do anything to maintain the temperature because I believed that my PS3 is good. It's not gonna die. It can't happen to me. It can't happen to me. I'm too good. You know, like, I'm not gonna like let it get all dirty. So it lasted. I bought it off of eBay, used. I think I paid like $280 or so back in the day for a 60 gigabyte backwards compatible, and it worked. I had it for like just over 5 years, and it finally died in 2014. I believe I bought it at the end of 2008 or sometime early 2009. It was the second PS3 that I ever owned. And it was the workhorse. It was the one that I played all those games on, and I remember it would get loud, and it would be loud, and it would like hold the temperature. But little did I know at the time that it was crying out like, it's gonna give out eventually. It's gonna give out eventually, and eventually one day, yell out of death, man, and that was it. And Nvidia got hit with that lawsuit because not just Sony was affected by this, but like Apple was affected by this. They call it Bumpgate. Solder Bumpgate on Flip Chip. But that was it. So anyway, that's what I've been dealing with. I've been trying to see if there's a way for me to revive my dead PS3. So we might make a video about that. I still need to figure out this DVD laser thing, though. Like, why is this not reading when it's vertical? Because I like the way I prefer the PS3 vertical because it saves a lot of space on my desk. I don't like it laying horizontal because it takes up way more space. So, and it's supposed to work when it's vertical for all types of discs. So I can't allow that to just be like that, you know? The PS2, I mean, it's just the same thing. PS2, I don't care. Like, why do I need to care about that one when I can just play my PS2 games on my PS3? So, but anyway, guys, there you go. That's the explanation. So now everybody who saw this hopefully now fully understands the root cause of the red ring of death and the yellow light of death. Microsoft owned up to the problem, but Microsoft kind of did themselves in with that problem because they had it set to like 83, man. They pushed it over the edge where it would swing up and swing down and swing up and swing down. That's going to break those joints so fast. That's the reason why Red Ring of Death started happening as early as less than 1 year after launch. People already had 360's Red Ringing of Death that early on. PS3 yellow light of death, you know, because I guess it's because of Sony's superior cooling system. But most PS3s, they went out of warranty before they would yellow light of death. So Sony never really owned up to the problem. They never admitted that there was a defect in the design because their PS3s managed to live past the warranty. So, because remember, Their cooling system was better at holding. It wouldn't let it go way over like Microsoft. So because of that, yes, it's going to die because you're still breaking it by putting it into this danger zone, but you're not like dipping it all the way under and then, so but it's eventually going to just give out. It just takes a lot longer for the joints, the solder joints to break. It'll take a longer period of time. So it'll fail, but it'll take longer to fail. And that's the reason why Sony kind of weaseled their way out of admitting to the problem publicly, because I guess they did a better job with their cooling system. You could chalk it up to the cooling, man. I guess the cooling of the PS3 managed to stave off death for as long as possible. I mean, mine last, I had it for over 5 years and it died. And it was one that was manufactured in 2000, I think it was like January or February 2007. Yeah, February 2007. So the previous owner had it for like 2 years, just about 2 years, and then I had it for another 5. So it lived a full life. I say this is why, remember we talked about hardware life cycles on this channel, 357. Despite the defect, my PS3 managed to live 7 years. So, most people would, okay, consumers probably think that's unacceptable, but from an engineering and a hardware design standpoint, for a consumer device, the useful lifespan is typically going to be under 7 years. 7 years is kind of the maximum. So the fact that mine managed to live a full 7 years despite this defect is testament to the engineering of that thing, at least the cooling system that Sony had designed. So even though it was set up to fail due to Nvidia's negligence, it still managed to live 7 years. So that is something to be impressed by. At least I would think so. So that's kind of the history of the 7th gen and the root cause of the red ring of death and the yellow light of death. That's probably going to be it for this stream. Alright, well, that's going to be it, guys, for Tech Thursdays, episode 140. Hope you guys found this episode interesting. We will be doing a gaming live stream this weekend. It's probably going to be, I don't know if we're going to do retro. There is a game that's coming out. It's actually out today, which we will probably be covering this weekend. So stay tuned for that. It's modern gaming. We're going back to modern gaming. Like I said last weekend, eventually I'm going to break out of the retro gaming cycle that I've kind of fallen into recently since the holiday. Because the memory prices are so depressing with computer hardware these days, I've just gone back to retro consoles. So this weekend is either going to be Trails Beyond the Horizon plus PS3, or it'll just be Trails Beyond the Horizon and maybe Monster Hunter if you guys want me to play Monster Hunter. I would like to do Monster Hunter, the Arch-Tempered Jindahad free challenge with my other character. So if you guys are around, those of you that play Monster Hunter with me, if you want to team up with me on that just to run me through that, that would be great. If not, that's fine, whatever. We've already did it last week. So I'm okay if we don't do that. But yeah, we'll be covering Trails Beyond the Horizon. And if there's more time, we'll be looking at PS3. You've been playing Chrono Trigger? You should play Final Fantasy 13 too. That is basically a much more modern version of Chrono Trigger. And that is a retro game. Okay, well, yeah, well, if you want to help me run it this weekend, it shouldn't take too long for us to do. It only took us like 2 tries or 2 or 3 tries last weekend. And we already kind of know what to do, so in my mind, there already is a Chrono sequel. It's called Final Fantasy 13-2. And we streamed it on a retro stream recently for the Xbox Series X, or was it the Xbox? Yeah, it was Xbox Series X / Xbox 360. So that is based. There will be no Chrono Trigger sequel because that is kind of the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. I didn't say Final Fantasy 13. I said Final Fantasy 13-2. Final Fantasy 13-2 is the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. If you never played Final Fantasy 13-2, then that's probably why you don't understand why I'm saying that. No, actually, yes, I will say that. Final Fantasy 13-2 is the spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. There's an interview somewhere in Japanese about this. And if you go and look at Final Fantasy 13-2, you will see a lot of parallels to Chrono Trigger, and more specifically, Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross is actually the game. I guess I should have clarified. Chrono Cross, the spiritual successor of Chrono Cross, is 13-2. That has been well established for more than 10 years now. 13-2 is one of the best games from the 7th generation. And, yeah, I never said 13, because 13 and 13-2 are two very different games. Very different games. The battle system is like the only thing that they have in common. They have nothing else in common. And then one of my favorite games from that generation is the third game in that 13 trilogy. But we've already kind of shown this on one of the previous live streams for the Xbox. Funnily enough, Xbox is actually... Series X is the best way to play those games. So, because it doesn't have the weird frame pacing issues that the PC port has. Because the PC port for 13 and 13-2 is really bad. It's like real bad. I wish they would like re-release those games on PC or do some kind of update to the port, because the port is god awful. The only one that's good is Lightning Returns. So I'm under the impression that I've come to the conclusion, actually, that the Xbox Series X is the best platform to play Final Fantasy 13-2. Specifically Final Fantasy 13-2. Lightning Returns has a good PC port, but 13-2 has a very bad PC port. And 13 also has a bad PC port, but 13 for some reason wasn't as bad as 13-2. I mean, there's weird stuff like you remove the minimap overlay and all of a sudden you gain like 20 FPS. I mean, there's some stupid stuff like that because the developers tied the frame rate to some kind of weird multiple of the refresh rate. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. Like, that's typical Japanese game design. I mean, we've said this before. It's like, what's a computer application that uses 90% of the CPU and 10% of the GPU? I mean, the answer is a JRPG. I mean, that's what people jokingly say in the developer world. Because, I don't know, like, the Japanese developers, at least the old school ones, they program the CPU to do everything, and they don't know how to use a modern GPU. I'm guessing the newer developers don't have this problem, but clearly the old school developers from the... you know, like the 80s, 90s, they don't, and rightfully so, because graphics technology back then was so basic. It was in its infancy back then, so I don't expect those guys to be experts on GPU multi-threading and parallelism. Xbox One, I mean, that's like the one Xbox console that I don't have right now. Like, I don't have an 8th generation Xbox console. I have the 360S, I have the original Xbox, and I have a Series X. But I personally don't see any reason to have an Xbox One if you're someone who already has an Xbox Series X. Series X is good, though. Series X is quite good. 360, man. Like, 360... I went back and I played 360, and I was like, man, this thing's held up pretty good. The 360 has held up quite good compared to PS3. Like, I was testing the performance of the in-game menu. Yeah, the cross-media bar is still pretty smooth, but anything outside of the cross-media bar is god-awfully slow. It's so bad on PS3. Like, downloading games... from the My Downloads list, from the archive is just so slow, and the installation time is awfully slow on PS3. So that triple core unified memory architecture that the 360 has, man, that thing puts in work in the modern era. Because that overly complicated cell architecture on PS3, it doesn't know what it's doing anymore. Like, yeah. It's funny because the PS3 when it first came out was so powerful, but you think about it now, the thing's got like 256 megabytes. Yeah, 256 megabytes of system RAM and 256 megabytes of VRAM. So that thing ain't gonna be doing much from an application standpoint. The 360 has 512 megabytes of unified system memory. So that means when you're in the menu system and you're not playing a game, like the pool of memory that it can allocate to the CPU tasks is double that of the PS3. So very interesting design choices. It's always fun to go back and look at how the engineers built these old consoles and how well they have aged or not aged as time has gone by. But yeah, I fired up PS4 Pro the other day. PS4 Pro, it still works good. I came to the realization that as much as I don't care about the 8th generation of gaming that much, the Xbox One and the PS4 was the time when consoles finally got good, so to speak, where they don't have a lot of slowdown when you're multitasking with them. They had enough CPU and memory and also storage to get by throughout that whole generation. I guess maybe the hard drive would need to be upgraded to a larger one if you have a big game library, but they're mostly trouble-free from what I could tell. But now noted they're not as old as the PS3 and the 360, but just hardware specs from the 8th generation got a lot better than what we had previously. But the previous jump from PS2 and Xbox to 360 and PS3 was a massive jump. Massive jump. The PS4 Pro is not quiet. I mean, to me, the launch PS4 and the PS4 Pro sound very similar. I think the PS4 Slim is quiet. The Pro is, I have the Pro and it doesn't seem that quiet. It's like a little bit quieter than the PS4, the launch one. I have the launch 4 and the Pro, and neither one of them are what I would consider quiet. The PS5 is quiet. Like for a console that uses quite a bit of power, the PS5 is quiet. I don't consider any PS4 as quiet as the PS5. But yeah, they're definitely, they went overboard on the fan because of what happened with PS3 dying last time with the all light of death. So they didn't want to try to risk that from happening again. Even though, you know, by this time Nvidia had fixed the issues. Although really, if you think about it, the bump gate issue, the underfill issue that Nvidia caused for all these companies, that really hurt their reputation. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why Sony doesn't use Nvidia for their consoles. Because of the whole thing with the PS3. The yellow light of death. It kind of makes sense now that I think about it. I never really thought about that until now. The PS3 was the last time Sony used Nvidia for their graphics. After that failure with the yellow light of death, they're like, never again, man. That's reputational damage right there. So they went AMD, so they went with the Radeon group. Mark Cerny came in, cleaned house. We're going to do x86 CPU. We're going to make this easy for the devs. No more Ken Kutaragi, overcomplicated cell and all this weird stuff that takes 3 years to figure out how to make games again. No, none of that stuff. No. We're going back to basics. So, yeah, it's been AMD for the GPU, Actually, the CPU was also AMD because it was a Jaguar for PS4. Is the whole thing just AMD now? Like what? Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Zen 2. Zen 2 cores in the PS5. Yeah, it's all AMD stuff now. Completely forgot about that. 13 doesn't have time travel. 13.2 has time travel. When you say you have to specify, 13 does not have time travel. 13.2 has time travel. A lot of time travel. A lot of going into the future, going back into the past, changing history. That is Final Fantasy 13.2. If I was gonna stay retro streaming, like retro game streaming, 13.2 and Lightning Returns are games that I would have continued to play through. Because those two games are excellent games, both of them, from that generation, from 7th generation. I don't know what you mean by from PS4 onwards, the PlayStation is no longer Japanese. It is absolutely Japanese. Sony has an entire engineering team based in Japan for the PS4 and now the PS5 and now the PS6. We're not going to talk about PS6. If Dreamcast 2 comes out, do you think it has a chance? No. No, it doesn't have a chance. Not in this market. Not with the way things have become. The consoles played a role in anchoring gaming away from becoming fully live serviced and cloud based. But as the consoles slowly become obsolete, we are slowly moving to an era of you will own nothing and you will be happy type of gaming. We're slowly moving to the Netflix model. That's what I see happening in the future. So I don't see how a Dreamcast 2, or any console for that matter, could stave that off. Like, I feel like the PlayStation 6 and whatever Microsoft plans to do from a traditional console device, that can help stave off cloud gaming. But I really don't know how cloud gaming will not take over the game industry long term. Gaming is slowly trending toward the same sort of model we have for video streaming. Like it's headed in that direction, subscription based, cloud based. The biggest problem right now is latency. Latency, especially for games that are like multiplayer competitive games. Once they figure that out, and that is, I can guarantee you right now, that is where NVIDIA's efforts that are not focused on AI, they're all focused on how to reduce the latency impact for cloud streaming, for cloud gaming. That is where NVIDIA is going to innovate the most. They want the traditional GPU in a computer to go away. They don't want consumers to own consumer GPUs because it is usually a low margin business. It is a loss leading business, especially for their AIB partners. And it's just something that they would rather not have to deal with. I mean, think about that. If I'm NVIDIA and if I can sell a data center, a game hosting data center, 100,000 GPUs, and have to deal with one enterprise customer versus like having to support warranty claims for some guy who broke his fan because he was cleaning it too aggressively or something. Like, who would I rather deal with? 100,000 separate customers who each bought one GPU, or one customer who bought 100,000 GPUs? Obviously, it would be the latter. So that is why NVIDIA is pushing this cloud gaming future. Like, they want to get away from traditional on-prem client-side gaming. And they want it to go cloud 100%. I mean, heck, they have GeForce Now It's so obvious. It's so obvious that's where all their research and development is going. And Nvidia carries a lot of clout with the gaming industry, more than you guys know. And if Nvidia says cloud gaming is the future, you know they're going to evangelize the gaming industry into believing that cloud gaming as a service is the future, even for single player games. Even for single player games. Single player games will be the first ones that would be what they call the low hanging fruit, because those are the ones where latency is not as big of a deal compared to a competitive shooter. So, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. They got to figure out the performance and latency. Once they figure out performance and latency and they have a solid offering, they're just going to start getting more subscriptions out of people. And the days of us talking about building high-end computer gaming rigs, that's slowly going to go away. It's slowly going to go away. This whole thing that we talked about with the memory prices going like exponentially high for consumers, that is going to accelerate the demise of traditional on-prem gaming. Because think about it, it's like no one's going to be able to afford upgrading their computer. So it's the perfect thing. They've created a perfect storm where it's like, oh, RAM is like $1,500 for 64 gigabytes of RAM. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't need to spend $1,500. Why would you spend $1,500 on RAM when you can just sign up for GeForce Now? It's so much cheaper. And if you're not going to play games for the next 2 months, you can just cancel. It's on demand. Why do you need to expend so much money on that high-end computer? Like, it's so pointless. You don't need that. All you need is a basic laptop. You know what I'm saying? Just connect to the cloud. All the compute power you need is right there at your fingertips. I mean, that is where it's going. That is where it's going. So, I can see the writing on the wall long term. This is why Sony, to a lesser extent Nintendo, because Nintendo is just kind of in their own little world, but Sony and maybe Microsoft, but Microsoft is actually embracing the idea of cloud gaming. Like, it's so obvious that Microsoft with their Xbox Anywhere is going down that path slowly as well. So Steam, cloud saves, all that stuff. Steam and Sony are kind of like the two. Steam is kind of doing a bunch of weird, like, pet projects with exploring the idea of going more to Linux, and they're going to release their own console and all this other stuff. So Steam is kind of like Nintendo, where they're kind of doing their own little thing. But Sony's really the only one, man. But Sony has PlayStation Now as well. So Sony, it's not like Sony's immune or not wanting to do cloud gaming. I mean, they're on board with that too. So eventually that's probably where it's going to go long term. But we're not going to see this for at least the next several years. So, all right, guys. Well, that's going to be it. We're right at the 3-hour mark. So this is where I'm going to end the stream. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We will do a weekend gaming stream if you want to tune in for that. We'll probably be doing Trails Beyond the Horizon and maybe Monster Hunter, maybe some retro gaming on the PS3. So tune in if you're interested, and otherwise, if you're not going to tune into that, that's totally fine. I will catch you guys on the next episode of Tech Thursdays, same time, a week from now. Until then, take care, and I will see you then. Thanks.